Welcome back everybody to the channel, and more specifically, welcome back to Is It Worth It? A series in which I cover games that I recently bought, played, and platinumed, and I let you know my opinions on those three categories for whatever game or games I'm playing. Heads up, there will be spoilers in this video. You have been warned. Also, I said platinums. I play games on PlayStation consoles, so I'm sorry if I alienate anyone from this series, but at the end of the day, achievements and trophies should be the same across the platforms, and the games, unless console exclusive, should be the same as well. Just thought some context should be added because Platinum is a big part of the series. Thank you. Today we'll be adventuring into the Far Cry series, but here's the thing. I will not be covering Far Cry games pre-Far Cry 3, and I will also be disregarding Far Cry 6, because well, I haven't gotten around to playing it, and after so many Far Cry games, we get the gist. But if I do get around to playing any more Far Cry games, you bet I'll cover them on here. So the question I'll be answering is a simple one. Are these Far Cry games worth it? Should you buy, should you play, should you platinum? Let's jump into it. Number 1, starting off with Far Cry 3 Classic Edition, which is the one I played. Don't confuse this with the original. We see the game that ended up propelling this series to become what it is now, finding itself as the best shooter of 2012, so no one was really shocked when down the line another 6.5 games were to come out after what many claim to be the cream of the crop of the series. Also, yes, I didn't forget you, Blood Dragon, but you also don't have a platinum, so I'll consider you as the half, but still not going to add you on this list. So focus up, people. I will now be covering a quick wrap-up of Far Cry 3, so skip ahead if you wish to. If not, just keep on watching. Ready? Unknowingly skydiving into a group of islands controlled by pirates, Jason Brody, his two brothers, and a few other friends are about to fall into the worst vacation of all time. Arriving onto the island, they are then captured by one of the most iconic antagonists in gaming history, Vaas, the psychotic pirate lord himself. Grant, Jason's older brother, who's ex-military, finds himself freeing the two from being held prisoner, but unfortunately in their escape, Grant ends up getting killed, leaving Jason to run for his life. As I'm recording this, I'm beginning to recognize a trend here for these Far Cry intros.
Run, Forrest! Run!
Being rescued by our main connection to the Rakyat tribe, Dennis, who begins to immediately start sizing up Jason as a huge potential for the Rakyat, Dennis begins to use Jason's unfortunate circumstances to an advantage, having him take on the Rook Islands and their pirates in hopes of a Rakyat victory. And as the game plays out, we end up rescuing the others, Lisa, your girlfriend, and friends Daisy, Oliver, and Keith, while being introduced to Dr. Earnhardt, Citra, Voss's sister, and finally CIA agent Willis Huntley and Herc, who will both be mentioned more than once. We see Jason becoming more and more developed as the game continues, realizing that he's no longer afraid of the evils on the islands. Jason becomes the fierce Rakyat warrior that has been told he embodies and starts to enjoy the chaos and killing. Now on the hunt for Vaas, Jason discovers Hoyt Volker, who's actually the top dog of this whole slave trading situation here. And by getting close with Citra, and I mean real close, too close, buddy, back up, this is family-friendly content, mother. Jason finally finds his way to Vaas and takes him out in a very psychedelic battle. Now with Vaas out of the way, Jason only has two things left to accomplish here. Kill Hoyt, rescue Riley, who's Jason's younger brother. Psst, he ends up doing just that. Finally returning to your friends, Jason finds himself in a weird love triangle. Does he choose his newfound warrior princess lover and the path of fierceness? Or give it all up for his family and friends? Well, that's up to the player to decide. With the wrap-up finish, Far Cry 3 was released on November 29th, 2012, 4 years after the release of Far Cry 2. Then re-released for newer gen consoles on May 29th, 2018, aka the Classic Edition. In 2023, we can clearly see that this game has received very good feedback over the years, and that this format will begin to be milked for years to come. Far Cry 3 can be found on the PlayStation Store for $30 at stock price, but can usually be found for way less than that during sales, as well as being bundled with the other Far Cry games. But if you don't want to pay for it at all, with the acquisition of one of the top 2 tiers of PlayStation Plus, you can play it for free. This will apply to the rest of the Far Cry games being covered in this video, except for the stock price of the originals. But since they're all basically free in this part with it on PlayStation Plus, I won't be covering this again. Ubisoft takes the cake for being the developers and publishers for all of these Far Cry games, so this will be the only time I mention this as well. So if you're new to this series that I do, what usually happens right about now after I cover all that is I tell you that when I'm playing this game, I start and stop timers on my phone throughout my time playing to accurately tell how long it took me to platinum the game, then add up all those sessions, and that leads me to a really accurate and specific main time to share for y'all. But as for the Far Cry games go, well, only 2 that I'm covering today have this specific data on my phone. So for the ones that don't, I'm going to go based on the PSN Profiles average time covered. According to PSN Profiles, Far Cry 3's Classic Edition Platinum takes on average 20 hours and only requires 1 playthrough. Far Cry 3 has a total of 43 trophies, plus 44 if you count that Platinum. Now let's take a look at how we can split this trophy list up into 5 common categories of trophy types I like to use. So for story, we have 12 total trophies. For difficulty, we have a total of 0 trophies. For collectible, we have a total of 6 trophies. For multiplayer, we have a total of 0 trophies, compared to the 6 in the original version. And finally, we have the rest. For the Far Cry games, we see a few similar trophy types across these games, everything from kill-based, different weapons, animal hunting, fishing, and human enemy kills, to elsewhere, to like conquering outposts and leveling up your character all the way. So for the total rest of trophies in this game, we have 25. Also, to PSN Profiles' credit, they dish out a trophy list platinum journey difficulty rating out of 10, 1 being the easiest and 10 being the hardest in this case. They've given Far Cry 3 a 3 out of 10, which is accurate enough for me. Maybe even drop that down a bit to a 2.5 out of 10. Now for my ratings for just the overall game experience, we have length and enjoyability. And enjoyability, I'm going to cover story, game mechanics, and visuals. I've got a 2 out of 10 for game length, seeing that this takes on average 20 hours. And I've got a 9 out of 10 for enjoyability. I platinumed Far Cry 3 back in 2020, and I first played it on Xbox 360 back when the original came out in 2012, so seeing that the visuals were not only good back then, but still look damn good today, for a game that came out 11 years ago, that makes me pretty fucking happy. And while recording this, I can't think of a time I've had any glitches or visual bugs happen to me. Obviously, this doesn't mean they don't exist, but for me, I didn't run into anything. Now for game mechanics, this was the first Far Cry game that I ever played, so the outpost and tower liberations, stealth and combat encounters with either the pirates or wild animals, or simply gliding around in the classic Far Cry wingsuit, all of it made me very happy. Now as for the story, younger me really just wanted to see the Yiddies, but as I played through it again for the platinum later in life, I realized just how good it actually was. The dynamic of our player character in foreign territory, outnumbered and being required to save the day with the good guys against the bad guys, is something we'll see a lot going forward. And I know this is what turns people off from the Far Cry series, as it can get repetitive. I get it. But it's become a guilty pleasure of mine, honestly, and Far Cry 3 hit it home for me with the ever-changing and adapting Jason Brody. He comes to terms with the badass he's become, and having the people around him become very aware of that fact that he's a badass and he isn't the same Jason anymore. Just that alone is dope, and with Voss being our villain of intense insanity and Hoyt pulling the strings from behind the scenes, I think that works out well for Far Cry 3's villain experience. And it gives added context to just how big of scale the pirates are actually operating on. Well, is it worth it to buy, play, and platinum Far Cry 3? I'm going to give it my approval for all 3. If you do not care for trophies and just want to enjoy a damn good time, it is no doubt worth the buy and play. Well, not only a good time, the platinum makes for an added bonus because it's not difficult by any means and makes for a good case for the first enjoyable platinum you'll ever receive, or some nice looking padding on a trophy hunter's list. Moving on, we have the next game I'll be covering, and that is Far Cry 4. Oh, Far Cry 4, how you have fucking frustrated me. I'll finish that thought later, guys, but first, let me give you a quick recap. Ready? Same drill as before. Arriving into Kyrat to spread his mother's ashes, Ajay Ghale lands smack dab into the country's ruthless leader, Pagan Min. Attacking the bus that AJ arrived on, we learn the relationship between the two is more than just a violent encounter, and then we're kidnapped and taken to Min's fortress where we're greeted with dinner. How nice. Upon escaping, again running away from a storm of bullets,
Here we go.
Ajay finds himself facing decisions the player must make throughout the game regarding who to follow and who to propel into the leader of the Golden Path. Both end up being pretty shitty choices if you ask me, but anywho, we continue doing Far Cry things, capturing outposts, towers, killing animals to upgrade a loadout. We learn of the 3 hotshots under Pagan Min. Operating the fighting arena and controlling the poaching and prostitution aspects of the operation, we have Noor Najjar. Operating as the enforcer and drug aspect of the operation, we have Paul Deplore Harmon. And finally, we have Min's adopted sister, Yuma Lao, who literally turned Far Cry 4 into a goddamn horror game for me. We go about dispatching these poor fucks like any good Far Cry protagonist would and run into someone familiar. In this case, a not-so-helpful Agent Willis Huntley, dropping our asses off to take care of, well, what we learned later were CIA assets, and Huntley using us to clean up after the CIA's dirty work and selling us out to Min. How nice. After finding our way back to the fight, we take care of any side work and finally storm Min's stronghold. Choosing to either let him go or shoot him, either way we finish up with Kyrat in our hands. Then depending on your choices throughout, we see a Kyrat turn into a drug den with no labor laws for profit, or an Andrew Tate type world with traditional values as the reward. Far Cry 4 was released on November 18th, 2014, 2 years after Far Cry 3, and looking back from our current time in 2023, we see once again another highly rated Far Cry with plenty of positive reviews, and also seeing itself win Best Shooter of 2014. According to PSN Profiles, Far Cry 4 takes on average 25 hours, and only requires 1 playthrough for the main game. I make that split because, well, unfortunately here, there are multiplayer trophies. Far Cry 4 has a total of 50 trophies, 51 if you count the Platinum. Now let's take a look at how we can split this trophy list up into categories. So for story, we have a total of 6 trophies. For difficulty, we have a total of 0 trophies. For collectible, we have a total of 5 trophies. For multiplayer, we have a total of 4 trophies. And finally, we have the rest. Across Far Cry 4, there's a lot of kill-based, quest-based, tower, outpost, fortress, liberations, and miscellaneous stuff out there. So for the total rest of trophies, we have 35. PSN Profiles rates this list a 3 out of 10, and this is where I fall apart and strongly disagree. If you currently do not have this platy, well, join the club. I know. I usually have these games all platinumed and all shined up before I cover them, but I don't in this scenario. I tried, guys, I really did, but the servers are basically dead, and boosting this trophy would take the help of 5 other people, and when it comes to player interaction, I hardly ever do it. I really hate multiplayer trophies for this reason, and dead servers fucking suck. So for me, I'd give this a 10 out of 10 right now, because I don't know if I'll ever come back around to grabbing this. It'll just sit up on the shelf, getting all dusty. I'm sorry, guys. So I wish you luck if you try to acquire this trophy in 23. I really do. But I still have a few other ratings, so turn that frown upside down, because here's some positivity. For game length, I'd give it a 2 out of 10. With no multiplayer, it'll take about 20 hours. As for enjoyability, I'm going to hand out a 7 out of 10. Whoa there, that's 2 points lower than you gave 3. What the hell's going on, you may ask? Well, here's my reasons. Ubisoft has been known for game glitches, but overall their games always come out looking graphically stunning. So there's no question for looks. As for game mechanics, it takes what the previous did and maybe improved things here and there, but either way, if it wasn't noticeable, I still enjoyed the format. As for the story, Far Cry 4 tackles deeper into the area of player choices, which I do really like, but unfortunately the choices for me were lackluster due to the fact that I didn't care for either Anita or Sabal, which were really the biggest choices the game threw at you. They were always bickering, and I just found myself ignoring them half the time and not even caring when I put a bullet through their heads. And as for the fate of Min, it's got the same kind of scenario. I didn't want to hear him talk, so I just shot him. But with that being said, I still love the charisma behind Min. It was such a contrast coming from the intensity that Voss gave to the charismatic but ruthless Pagan Min. And that I definitely loved. I've got a soft spot for these Far Cry villains, man. I really do. So it's question time. Is it worth it to buy, play, and platinum Far Cry 4? Well, if it was a few years ago, I'd approve of all 3, but seeing I failed grabbing this platy because of stupid multiplayer failures, I can't give my dad's stamp of approval for the plat, but I will stamp off on buying and playing. If you enjoyed Far Cry 3, you will jump right into this and most likely love it and get to kicking ass right away. Like I've stated and will state again, these games all look gorgeous. The gunplay and overall gameplay don't ever disappoint me. As for the story, I'm not going to bash it too hard because I know most, will definitely not feel the same as me. So even though my second biggest gripe with the game was the story, it's still definitely worth picking up and you'll probably love it either way. You'll love it. Jump right into it. Don't take my hate for the story as a huge thing. On to what I'm going to be calling my third favorite Far Cry game that I've played so far. It's going to be Far Cry Primal. But before that, you know the drill. Ready? Turning back the clock way back, and I mean way back, to 10,000 BC, we follow Takkar, the Beastmaster, and member of the Wenja tribe. We see him going off in search of a mammoth for their hunt, and during their hunting trip, they are cut off by a saber-toothed tiger and wiped off the map, leaving Takkar to run from the beast. In this case, he falls from a great height, but I'm still considerate running, in just like the other Far Cry games, because it fits my narrative. He ends up crossing paths with Sayla, another Wenja who discloses to Takkar that the land of Oros has seen the Wenja being captured and killed by the rivaling tribes, the Udam and the Zyla. Even though it's 10,000 BC, we still do what every Far Cry game does, and we go and rescue our fellow comrades to aid us in these tough times. These specialists also being fellow Wenja, we acquire their help by tackling their problems before we jump into ours and invite them back to the camp. We have Tenzay, the shaman, Jama, the huntress, Karush, the warrior, and Woga, the craftsman. With our tribe growing in size, we can finally stand a fighting chance against the land of Oros. We set out to capture the commander of Udam, and we gain him by our side as well. His name is Da. We invade his fortress, capture him, he gives us information, which we also do against the Azala, grabbing Roshani in hopes of learning from the Azala. Same kind of scenario. We come face to face with both leaders of the rival tribes, a few times back and forth, and I can't pronounce this guy's name, whatever your fucking name is, and Batari. A couple times before we ultimately go for the kill and rid Oros of the evil that roam. Far Cry Primal was released on February 23rd, 2016, a little under 2 years after the release of Far Cry 4, as a spin-off from the series. And jumping from 10,000 BC into 2023, where we are, we can see it's another highly rated Far Cry game. According to PSN profiles, Far Cry Primal takes on average 24 hours, and when this installment of the Far Cry being one of the 2 games I actually recorded my time on, I come out about 6 hours less than the average time, sitting at 17 hours, 54 minutes, and 33 seconds. Far Cry Primal has a total of 50 trophies, 51 if you count the platinum. And now let's take a look at how we can split this trophy list up into categories, shall we? So for story, we have a total of 12 trophies. For difficulty, 0. For collectible, we have a total of 3 trophies. For multiplayer, 0. And finally, we have the rest. Across Far Cry Primal, we see a majority of the trophies falling in the kill-based category, with the rest being outposts and story missions, along with the new feature of taming beasts, hence the nickname Beastmaster. So for the rest of the total trophies, we have 35. PSN Profiles hands out a rate of a 3 out of 10, which again, probably I'll agree with, maybe drop it down to a 2.5 out of 10. There are a few things that make this trophy list tedious and maybe sometimes difficult, but overall it's very straightforward with plenty of opportunity to grab everything in one playthrough. As for length, I'll give it a 2 out of 10, and for enjoyability, an 8 out of 10. Even though I don't speak Ooga Booga and had to read the subtitles every time a word was spoken to understand what was happening, I quite enjoyed the experience. It's a huge detour from the series, and the game has you fighting with extinct animals with spears and arrows. Like, how did anyone see this one going this way? After just going to fucking Kyrat and killing dictators. And also, we see a shaman make us a drink out of blood and dirt, and now we see fucked up visions. You cure diseases and injuries with fucking dirt, leaves, and death. Oh, and you let your skull breathe, whatever that means. Far Cry Primal was a shot in the dark, and I'm glad they took it. The abundance of animals in the vast landscape untouched by modern man was definitely something to get used to. No guns, no roads, no wingsuit. Can't tell you how many times I've tried to use that one still. And constant deadly animals around every corner, not shying away from wiping out your entire tribe. That's fucking serious. It's serious stuff. The story, although not exactly groundbreaking, was one that could easily keep you entertained and locked in while exploring the map and taking care of all the other side business. And I mean lots of business on the side. There's a hefty amount of grinding and walking to do. And if you barely rode one of the animals that you can tame, like my dumbass did, it makes the game feel sometimes slow until you grab enough outposts and campfires to fast travel around the place. But that definitely didn't slow me down in the sense that I could always run around and grab something else in my walking to a certain direction. There was always stuff to do and to get distracted. So for question time, is Far Cry Primal worth it to buy, play, and platinum? Absolutely. I'm going to give it all 3 of my stamps of approval because, well, this game alone is a good-ass time, and if you want to play through the Far Cry games, and with this being free, it's a definite pickup. For a casual gamer like that, it's a good-ass game to play through. But as for the platinum journey, it only took me about 18 hours, so that's pretty short for a nice Far Cry game. This is going to be the shortest one of the series. So if you're running through all the Far Cry games, it's definitely worth the time, as it differs heavily from the gunplay-based, action-junkie games were previously covered, but still gives you that great Far Cry feel. It's going to be a good-ass time. On to the next, we've got Far Cry 5, a very, very close second as my pick for my favorite Far Cry game that I've played so far. It's a controversial opinion, maybe, I know, but you know the drill. We're going to jump into the recap really quick, so ready? Huge change this time for the Far Cry series. We play as a no-name deputy. Create your own deputy, that is, because we can create our own character in this one. We are no longer set as one protagonist. You can be anybody you want. But we're new to the job, and we join Deputy Marshal Cameron Burke, Sheriff Earl Whitehorse, and the other 2 deputies, Joey Hudson and Stacy Pratt. With an arrest warrant in hand, they begin their walk to the compound in search of Joseph Seed, our main antagonist for the game. Apprehending Joseph, we escort him back out to the helicopter when we are finally attacked by his followers. Crash landing and slowly coming back into consciousness, we see our friends getting dragged off, which prompts us to run for our lives. Again with the running. We see ourselves being rescued by Dutch, a survivalist prepper, and begin to venture into the open world of Far Cry 5, exploring rural Montana. Given the mission to gather up a group of resistance members, we see our no-name deputy experience what no other Far Cry protagonist has experienced before. American-grown religious nutjobs armed to the teeth who think the world is ending. We soon encounter this game's version of the mini-bosses though, or in this case, the Heralds of Joseph's Cult. These members consist of Joseph's older brother, Jacob, aka the Soldier. He's ex-military and the overseer to the cult's training regiment and brainwashing. Joseph's younger brother, John, aka the Baptist, whose prior field of expertise was in law and the business side of things. He acquired the land to be able to run this operation in mass scale, and uses his professional smooth talk to convert residents into the cult. And finally, we have Faith, aka the Siren. Faith is in blood to the Seeds, but has become a crucial part of the operation. She uses the Bliss to control the prison camps as well as capturing our heroes in attempts to bring them over to their side. One by one we take them out, but not without taking any damage. When experiencing the path for Jacob, we are captured and treated to the same brainwashing the rest of the cult's militant members were experiencing, which ends up biting us in the ass a couple times. John ends up being an aerial dogfight, which doesn't really impact anyone but him because he's dead now. Then for Faith, well, she did fully convert Burke, causing him to kill the leader of the Cougars, Virgil Minkler, then proceeds to off himself, leading to Faith kidnapping Sheriff Whitehorse, which leads us to kill Faith and get him back. After the family is taken care of, we just have Joseph left. He recaptures our friends that we just rescued and uses the Bliss on them to keep us from doing anything drastic in the final negotiation, leaving the player to either choose to leave with his friends, letting the father go, or attack the father, saving the friends from the Bliss. If the player chooses to leave, our second encounter of the brainwashing ensues, with the radio playing our trigger song, then the credits roll. If the other option is picked, our no-name deputy begins the battle with the father while reviving the blissed-up comrades, leading to a nuclear explosion. Forced to flee with the father to Dutch's bunker, we end up crashing, killing all of our friends in the process, being dragged to the bunker by the father, awakened and cuffed, with a dead Dutch on the ground and Joseph next to him. Far Cry 5 was released on March 26, 2018, 2 years after the release of Far Cry Primal. Still received relatively well, but definitely not on the same up-and-up reviews that the previous games mentioned did. With that being said, it still doubled the sales of the previous main installment, Far Cry 4. According to PSN profiles, Far Cry 5 takes on average of 25 hours, and Far Cry 5 has a total of 50 trophies, 51 if you count the platinum. Now let's take a look at how we can split this trophy list up into categories. So for story, we have a total of 14 trophies. For difficulty, we have 0. For collectible, we have a total of 2 trophies. For multiplayer, we have a total of 6 trophies. And finally, we have the rest. Across Far Cry 5, well, you know the drill how Far Cry works with their trophies. So for the total rest of trophies, we have 28. PSN profiles rates this list at 3 out of 10, which I'll agree with to an extent. Its multiplayer trophies aren't as bad as far as Far Cry 4's, seeing that this is a newer game and it's not completely dead, but the unfortunate side of it is every year it gets older, and it's getting to be that point. So I'll bump this list up to a 4 out of 10. Other than that, it's a normal Far Cry trophy list experience. On to length. Again, Far Cry games don't run at the lengthy time, so another 2 out of 10 will be handed out. And for enjoyment, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. As an American raised up in the northern mountains, brought up in the sticks, I find this one very welcome. The beautiful Montana landscape with the abundance of familiar animals that roam this country, it was, I'll say it again, a very welcoming sight. Joseph Seed, although not so welcoming or relatable to me, was brought to life with the idea of religion, freedom, and family. To a much more extreme extent, obviously, but absolutely killed it as far as Far Cry villains go. Along with the help of his brothers, which was an awesome idea. Mix that in with an even more beefed up looking game, with better gunplay, and you make one of my favorites when it comes to the series. So it's question time. Is it worth it to buy, play, and platinum Far Cry 5? Even though this would probably be the biggest turning point for people to continue to stick with the series or move on from it, I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to dish out a 3 for 3 when it comes to my stamps of approval. It's absolutely worth the pickup. It's a satisfying gameplay experience as the Far Cry games always are, and the platinum is definitely worth the 20 to 25 hour sit down to add another platinum to your showcase. That is, if you can get to the multiplayer stuff done. If it's dead at this point, I platinumed this game 2 years ago. If it's dead now, I'm sorry if you're trying to adventure into this trophy run. I feel for you, as you can see from my Far Cry 4 playthrough. I feel you. Last on the list here today is Far Cry New Dawn, a game that actually is a half a game, but still holds a shiny plat in the face of trophy hunters, so I still gotta cover it. Before we jump into it though, let's recap the game. Following the events of Far Cry 5, New Dawn acts as the post-apocalyptic world after the player chooses to not leave Joseph Seed alone, and the bomb went off. Acting as another no-name create-your-own deputy, but this time no-name captain of security, to a group of skilled survivors helping communities build and grow. Cut short by these two, the twins, Mickey and Lou. Derailing the train and pillaging the remains, the twins begin to turn over Rush and the player to fall subject to the duo's violence. Before that, we run. Again.
Rush! Rush, it's Carmina! Rush, if you're alive, head to the river. You can follow the river.
Okay, but after being pushed to safety by Rush and rescued by the daughter of a familiar face, that face being Nick Rye, we begin our journey to prosperity and to further improve and gain information about the situation at hand. Tasked with the usual objectives for a main protagonist, we, save the day type shit, we gather up our daily dose of resistance fighters and plenty of materials to build up our community. Then the twins show up again and threaten some kiddos and send their baddies to try and kill us. But they fail because, we're badass and all. We're the head of security, bitch. Come on now. Come on. Who do they think we are? But everybody else thinks we need help, so we venture up north to the father country and meet the son instead, Ethan Seed. He tells us in exchange for his father's notice of death, he will provide us help against the highwaymen. We travel even further north and meet our favorite American psycho. No, not that one. This one. This time we have no real prior knowledge of the father other than a few accounts, but we trust his ways have changed as he's seen his world fall to tough times. Well, no shit, buddy. It's tough. You blew us up. But he finally gets it, so that's the point here. He provides us with an apple, and we go fight a superpowered methed up bear, and we now have lines of cocaine at our disposal. But find ourselves getting a call from the twins about some bullshit, and we go play their messed up games really quick. And then they blow Rush's head off. Yeah. We beat the shit out of him for a couple seconds before getting blown away by that same very shotgun that blew off his head. Press F to pay respects, and then we're on our way again. Infiltrating a prison, a derby, we find ourselves killing the rest of the heads of the highwaymen, but not the twins. Learning of Ethan's betrayal, we rush back to New Eden, confronted by the twins, one final time, and an all-out battle takes place. They got a lot of health, but we got more, so we kill them. She gives her spiel, then we blow her away.
Hold on a minute, I got something perfect for this. What? What the
Yeah. Alright.
my fucking grenade bounced off of it.
Moving further north, we see Ethan ignoring his dad, eating the apple we ate not too long ago, but having a way different reaction. We chase him down and kill Bigfoot. I mean Ethan, and Joseph finally has no one left. He succumbs to his fate and we shoot him with no hesitation, no remorse, because why the fuck would we have any?
Zero hesitation.
I kept pushing it as soon as I was just waiting for that moment.
It was kind of a coincidence, actually, because I pressed it once, and it was literally at the perfect time.
I just kept pressing it. I kept pressing it. I was waiting for it. The end. Oh wait, Rush's name is spelled with a 5. Okay, the end. Far Cry New Dawn was released on February 14th, 2019, as a direct spin-off to Far Cry 5. We'll dive into it a little bit more in a bit, but it's probably my lowest rated one off this list here today. According to PSN profiles, Far Cry New Dawn takes an average of 20 hours, and New Dawn is the second one to have my very accurate platinum completion time recorded thingy. Coming in at 23 hours, 10 minutes, and 28 seconds, Far Cry New Dawn has a total of 50 trophies, 51 if you count that platinum. Now let's take a look at how we can split these trophy lists up into categories. So for story, we have a total of 9 trophies. For difficulty, we have a total of 0 trophies. For collectible, we have a total of 7 trophies. For multiplayer, we have a total of 1 trophy. It's a co-op trophy. Not that bad. And finally, we have the rest. Again, it's a similar layout here for New Dawn and all the other Far Cries. So for the total rest of trophies, we got 33. PSN profiles rates this list a 3 out of 10, which I'll agree with. If it weren't for that co-op trophy, this list could be easily obtainable by yourself in less than 20. Honestly, it probably wouldn't take even that long. But since it exists, it'll be ranked a 3 out of 10. It honestly made this game so much more enjoyable to play with my buddy, who quite possibly could be in future videos if I don't take a dip into games I've platinumed way before this whole idea. So if you enjoy any of our bullshit, stick around because he'll be here. That leaves us with length and enjoyability. For length, it gets the usual 2 out of 10, as this game, can fall anywhere between probably 20 to 25, but overall, it's not lengthy at all. As for enjoyability, I'm going to give this game a 6 out of 10. Honestly, the only thing that keeping this game above a 5 is the fact that it still has the enjoyable Far Cry layout. And the new RPG style with the health bars, I actually, I kind of enjoyed. Post-apocalyptic scenarios are always cool, so with the mutated legendary animals and scavenging for supplies, that was fine too. But that's where my positivity ends. The twins, oh, the twins. What can I say about them? Alright, I hated them. They were obnoxious, and when they tried to make us be all sad and shit for them, I just didn't give a fuck. I was happy to end her sad talk at the end with just a hail of bullets. I found more enjoyment out of the father's part of the story, seeing that he became a changed man more than the villains that were on the damn cover. Also, Ethan's a dumbass, but he turns out into a cool monster, so woohoo! Sorry there, I almost lost my cool. But I still have a question to answer. Is Far Cry New Dawn worth it to buy, play, and platinum? Well, thing is, the only thing saving it here is it's free. That's the only thing saving it. If you had to buy this game, I feel sorry for you. But since it's free, I'll stamp it on the buy part. But if you're not going through the Far Cry games in order and you're playing them and doing all that shit or going for the plat specifically, for the Far Cry games, then it's just not worth the play. And if you are going for that plat, we'll make it quick and move on because I'm not giving this one a stamp of approval for anything.